there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. Did I say that right? Female Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Christa Gurka. And today I have a guest again. I love having guests on my podcast. So I have Lauren Amron, who is my COO at Pilates in the Grove. She also has started a new cohort in our coaching and mentorship programs, which she'll actually be on the podcast in a couple weeks talking about that program. So stay tuned. But basically what we're going to talk about today is how we as a company review our metrics and specifically how we do quarterly reviews. Because sometimes looking at things week over week are not long, like it's not enough time frame to look it over, and sometimes month over month also, because in our businesses we see seasonality and we also sell packages and stuff, so it kind of doesn't always apples to apples. But definitely in a quarter, at least what we can do is you can see how are you doing and how close or far are you from your annual goals and what do you need to pivot, right? And so Lauren has been really an amazing asset to have on our team for just over a year now. I think you started in March 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she's really restructured a lot of our analytics and our spreadsheets and stuff. So I invited her on here to help us teach you how we go through our quarterly review and actually what the numbers mean. Okay. So let me ask you just this first, Lauren. So just in general, when we did our quarterly review and you look at the numbers, how would you say, if I was meeting with you for the first time today about our quarterly review, how would you tell me as the COO and finance person how Pilates in the Grove is doing, just like in general?
So for the first quarter, I would say we're doing great. We exceeded our expected revenue. Our net income was looking good. And mostly the thing that I think tells the story better than anything, because it's the thing we kind of have some control over, is utilization. How many bodies did we get into the studio? Because that we can take specific initiatives to try to control. It can't always control it, but you can have some impact on that number, which then leads to all the other numbers. If there's bodies in the studio and your pricing is right, you're going to make money. And so, so that would be my quick 1 minute answer.
And do you think that also doing utilization, like those kind of numbers, have you found over the year that you've been with us that is an easier metric and number to translate to the team in terms of like how they understand what's actually happening in the studio?
Yeah, for sure. For both the admin team and the instructors, it's a really clear correlation with if bodies are in the seats, so to speak, or on the reformers, things are going well. Like the goal is really, we sell a service, but what we sell is time and space. And so if the time and space is full, then things are going well. And that's something they can see and they can impact, right? Because they can send a message to a client they haven't seen in a couple of weeks. They can have small actions that are very easy to understand that can impact those numbers, which then trickle up to the P&L, basically.
Right. Which is great. And Lauren's been really helpful in helping us, or helping me specifically, excuse me, look at what our revenue and profit goal is, and then disseminate that down into that utilization number. So for example, if Lauren and I say, we want to do, and just use an easy number, we want to do $10,000 in revenue, right? We can just back our way into how many people in classes or how many patients in the door equals $10,000. So instead of telling our team we want $10,000, we can say to them, we need 50 private sessions this week. We need 100 class reservations this week, right? And so that has been an easier number for the team to understand. And like Lauren says, impact, because then they have very binary actions of like, oh, I need to get one more person in. What are the 3 things I can do to get one more person in? I can text them, I can call them, I can put a post up on social media, I can ask the teacher, hey, do you know anyone I could call to like fill that spot, right? I didn't say that at the beginning, but we are going to be sharing some screens and our spreadsheets and stuff. And I do have a special gift for you guys if you listen all the way to the end. I do have a special little gift for you, but this is an episode that you may at some point want to go watch on my YouTube channel, only because we are going to be sharing momentarily a spreadsheet and you can't hear a spreadsheet. And so it will be easier at some point if you save this episode and then go to my YouTube channel, which is just Christa Gurka, and you can see what we're actually sharing. Okay. So let's go ahead, Lauren, and share the quarterly spreadsheet first.
For the
The quarterly
revenue?
review one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we're going to do, Lauren and I are going to basically share with you the way that we do our kind of quarterly check-in. Lauren did a great job in creating this spreadsheet for us. And so why don't you tell us, Lauren, go ahead and tell us, like, what are we looking for in terms of what you say there, the budget and then the actual, and we have it broken down into month.
Okay. So our budgeted revenue, so our top number sales for each month in the first quarter, which is historically our busiest quarter of the year. We're in Florida, we have snowbirds, we have a lot of people back from holiday travel. So this is go time for us in Miami. So we had a revenue goal of 120,000 a month. These are rounded numbers. So the quarterly goal was just over $360,000, but basically this, and you can see here, we beat that goal the first 2 months of the quarter. Each January, we beat it by over $10,000. We were at a little over 130,000. And February also, we were at 130 and beat it by 10. And we were under in March. So we missed the mark in March by $11,500. But if you look at the quarter total, you can see we still exceeded by $8,000. And so I guess the message there is, when Christa said it's easier to look at the quarter than the month, or the month than the week, or the year than the quarter, just to remember the end game, and that any little blip or miscalculation can be fixed when you make it part of the larger story.
Picture. Yeah. And so when we look at, you might be saying, so I'm trying to think of like questions people would have like in the background. So they'd be, if you're saying, oh, well, how did you get to 120,000 a month? That ties into what our annual revenue goal is. Okay. So what we did was we just break it up into quarter, and then we break the quarters up into month. Now, the other thing that I want you to say, because a lot of people don't do this when they're doing metrics. Explain to me what you have in like the top left under Q1, where he says source for actual numbers is QuickBooks. So explain to me what that means, because a lot of people don't do this or understand it.
So probably in each of your businesses, you have different places you can see your numbers. Like you can use your platform. We use Moments, but whatever platform you use for customer bookings, interactions, whatever, you can use that. You can use QuickBooks or whatever accounting software platform you use. You could use the bank. You could actually look at money that was deposited in a certain amount of time, assuming you deposit all the funds that come in. But those are all going to probably give you different numbers. Or, oh, you could look at your credit card processor like Stripe or whatever interfaces with your platform to use credit card payments. So you could look at all those sources, those four, for the same time period and get a different number because of timing. So, if a payment comes into Stripe, it might take 3 days to hit the bank or whatever. QuickBooks might take until your bookkeeper has a moment to go back and reconcile. So it's important when you're looking at numbers to just look apples to apples, to always know that you're sourcing the data for any analysis from the same place period after period. So it's just a habit to note the source. So like, I weren't here next year first quarter and someone else wanted to compare to this, they would be able to source from the same place and remember where they source from. And so it's just a good little habit to get into, to note where you got your number from.
Right. And it's always great. So if I go back and I look at the number, or if I'm looking at reports and Lauren sends me this and I'm looking in moments, which by the way is like Mind Body or Walla or all of that stuff, or Mariana Tech. If I'm looking in moments and I'm like, well, I get such and such a number, we're technically not looking at the same number. And so she is sourcing it from QuickBooks, which, to be honest, in my opinion, we love to source better from QuickBooks because it's just more accurate. So Winter is saying hi.
I know.
That's okay.
I'm trying to make her to be quiet, but she's not.
Don't make her be quiet. She's so cute. Is she okay though? She's sweet.
Yeah,
she's so cute.
Fine. She just wants to play.
Pre-show, Lauren and I were talking because I have unbeknownst to me, people were coming to work on my roof today. And so my dog, Duncan, who makes a cameo a lot of times, was barking like crazy. And then Lauren said that she has construction next door. And so her dogs are crazy too. But this is a real life show. And so it's totally fine. Okay. So let's go back. So now when I look at these numbers, people, I also, and Lauren has become really amazing at this too, I can look at the numbers and I'll tell you what I see from a business owner. Okay. So what I see is January was great. We always do well in January. I think it's amazing. And one of the reasons we do really well in January too is because we do not do a huge sale at the end of the year. Like a lot of people do these big holiday sales or end of the year sales. And what that usually does with businesses is that they make January slow because everyone purchased at the end of December, and then you have to pay taxes on those purchases then. But if we do, a lot in January, I get to hold on to that money for the whole year and then pay taxes on it. So January looks good. The other thing to me that looks great is that February, even though it's a short month, we did the same amount of revenue in February as we did in January. So for me, that looks awesome. And then when I look into March, I know that in Florida, spring break is in March. And so we have a lower revenue month for two reasons. One, we had two big months, which means that usually the revenue is going to dip down a little bit because people buy packages and such. And also it was spring break, which means people are out for 7 to 10 days. And our schedule does fluctuate during that. So those are the stories that I look at from a business owner. And then for you, Lauren, when you look in terms of, being accountable for the P&L and the finances, like what do you see from your side?
Yeah, I mean, the story you told about the utilization and the January, I agree with. And I think that as long as overall we're hitting really for the year, these little blips are less important to me. I'm not worried about it. And we always do these numbers after the fact, right? Because we need the quarter to close before we do it. So I've already seen half of April and I know that it's going well. And so I'm not overly concerned. I think if you get too worried about any one particular week or month, you could sidetrack yourself from like the anxiety of that. So
for sure.
Especially when you're starting and each dollar is really so relevant, but I think you have to not panic and just stay steady and keep on the path if it's had a proven track record,
Yeah, for sure. And I think someone said to me one time, like, we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. And we just have to remember that this is like a long game here. So, okay. So this is great. Now let us look, let's slide over to the next tab where we're talking about net income. And then do you want to just explain to some people, if they might not be familiar with that term, net income, what that means?
Yeah, sure. So the net income is the amount of money left after you've paid for everything. So it's all of the money that comes in minus all of the money that goes out, which includes an owner's salary. It includes whatever expenses you have, rent and taxes and all of that you paid in the time period. And it's the amount that's left at the bottom of the column.
Yeah, which is really, I mean, from my perspective, and then from your perspective, you can let me know what you think from all your years in this kind of field. To me, this is the more important number because yes, while revenue is great and it's a big number and people love to talk about revenue, if you bring in $10 million a year and you spend 11, guess what? Your business is not really profitable. So we like to look at our net income, like what's left over to make sure we stay on track. And so let's go ahead and kind of tell us what we're looking at in this numbers. I can't speak English.
So
I'm sorry.
I think that the story, the takeaway from this that's helpful for people is January's net margin, which is the percent of revenue that net income represents. So if you take your net income and make a fraction over your revenue, it will come out to this percent. So 21% for us is a really strong month. Yep. If you look at the number below that, the trailing 12 months. So this is giving you at the end of January for a year-long period, this will give us the 10 months. And so, I mean, the 10%, sorry, 9.97. So those numbers are telling you really how profitable you are. And so I think that's valuable. The other thing to look at in this chart is we were negative in February. And so February, because the way the month shook out this year, we had 3 payrolls in February. And so it's negative, but it allows March to be stronger, even though we had a lower revenue month in March. So again, it's the same message, just that the balance over time and not to have a total panic attack if you see that negative number, but to be a little bit of investigator and figure out why. Because I think that'll allow, first of all, it'll give you some peace of mind. And second of all, it'll allow you to understand it'll allow you to understand trends over time.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I saw when I saw February. So I saw when we talked about the tab before, I was like, oh, February was great. We had a short month and we still did as much revenue as we did in January. And then when we come to this tab, you're like, oh, but look but you're still negative. And that's because we actually had a payroll hit February 29th and our payrolls run what? $30,000. I mean, you do payroll. So are they approximately?
You can see it a little bit here. Look at the expenses. I'm jumping to another one, but
yeah,
this
it's basically
is just an easy way to see it.
So basically $30,000 difference, right?
Right.
Yep.
Which is going to make all the difference because the net income was 27,000 here.
Yep.
So that's the swing that's going to take it down to a negative number or basically 0.
Right.
So that it's a really easy way to see it, that number,
that was great.
Drove the difference,
Yeah. And then if we look at, can you go back to the other tab for a second? So, but if we look at where we're falling at the end of Q1, we're still in a 10% margin and our goal was 8. And the reason our goal is 8, when we look at healthy percentages, I actually use this sheet a lot, which if you're in our coaching group, you've got, I don't think you can see it.
We can do this.
Well, I think it's because my video's blurred my background. So we use this percentage. So if you're in Beyond the Movement, any of the mentorships, you guys receive this. When we look at a healthy percentage in terms of profit, we usually are recommending we're between 12 and 15% profit. 12 to 15% profit in a brick and mortar service-based business. Online businesses, mobile businesses that have different overheads are different. Okay. So our goal was 8%. So you might be like, well, isn't that low? Well, it is, but what happened in the last 4 years is very significant. So in 2020, we were negative, right? We were in the hole. We owed money. In 2021, we were still negative. So we were in the hole. In 2022, I believe I had paid off all my debt. So when you came on in 2023, I was trying to grow to like 4%. Is that correct? Do you remember?
Yeah, I
It all
think
blurs together.
you had paid off most of it, and I think we had 2 small amounts remaining for
Okay.
2023. But yeah, you were there, and then you were trying to climb back up.
Right. So this
toward
is
the end of
why if you're
23.
saying, well, that doesn't look good if you're still at 8%, but if you look at it in terms of a percentage, right? Like if we went from 4% at the end of 2023 to wanting to get to 8%, we doubled our profit, right? And now if we're getting to 10%, we're doing really, really, really well. So I'm quite confident that we'll get up to our, 12% probably by the end of the year if everything looks well. But anyways, that's what we want to look at when we're looking at healthy percentages in terms of profit and what you want to see. So if your profit is like 2 or 3%, my question then sometimes becomes like, I'll give you a perfect example. So say one locate, like for us, Coconut Grove is more profitable than South Miami because our expenses are different and we can get more business in. So if I'm looking at it and I'm talking to Lauren and we see a whole year where South Miami is at 0% profit, like it's a break-even studio, the question becomes, do we keep South Miami open? Is it worth it? Could you do the same amount of work, right? Now there's, I don't know if you want to call opportunity costs and things like that. And like, does it help to have that open because people can go to both locations and you're keeping your staff? But it's a question to say, is it worth the same effort to have a 0% profit studio? I mean, what are your feelings on that, Lauren?
So obviously the goal would be to not have that happen, and I would dig pretty deep. There's some things that are out of your control if you have a lease that you can't negotiate or that is fixed in a certain way, but you kind of then have to look at like the viability. I would love to look at each location as a standalone in terms
Yeah.
of viability and hope that each one could sort of hold its own. There's some like economies of scale that you don't need to duplicate with multiple locations, like management salaries and things like that. But I think that hopefully that wouldn't be the case. So what I'd look at is, the demographics of the neighborhood. Is the pricing appropriate for one neighborhood, but not the other? We don't have that. Our demographics very similar in our 2 neighborhoods. The lease is a huge one. Any other fees or fixed costs that you can't control. We went through a whole exercise in 2023, really trying to get a handle on those costs and streamlining and trying to take advantage of some of the things that you can by having more than one location.
Yeah. And, and it's something to look at where we can be like, how can we optimize each location for itself? Right. And it's a good reason why we look at our numbers separately as best as we can. Right. Okay. So let's pull that chart back up and let's go to the utilization page because I think that people will really understand that. So whether you're a studio or you're a PT clinic or you're a combination of both, you can still do utilization, right? Utilization just means how much of your schedule are you utilizing? So if you have 100 spots available in a week, how many of those spots are actually filled? So go ahead and let us know what we're looking at here.
So we look at utilization. We do look at a weekly basis. And I actually think we even look at it on a daily basis per studio. And I can show you that after we go through this chart. But I actually think that's the most helpful thing that we look at on a really granular basis, because I think it tells you the specific story. It literally tells you if it was a rainy day. It tells you if,
Yeah.
you know, someone, like there was a flood or someone was on vacation. It can really tell you a lot, or force you to ask the questions anyway. So this is pretty straightforward. If you take every space we have available, so we have 10 reformers in one studio. So each class is 10 spots. We have usually 7 classes a day. Some have 8, some have 6, but most have 7. So you have about 70 possible spaces a day, times the number of days you're open, and so on and so forth. So we have 24, and the same for the other studio. So then you add those all up and you get a total available number of spaces and the total actual number of spaces we sold during that month. And when we say sold, this is probably another point to keep in mind. We include revenue generated for the spot, not only body in a space. So late cancels count and no-shows count, because in our system and pursuant to our policies, those are charged visits. So
We're still generating revenue for that spot.
Right. And so because we don't penalize ourselves or our staff for somebody saying they're going to be there and not going to be there.
Right.
We have a policy that's very reasonable in terms of cancellation. And if clients can't meet that, not to say we don't sometimes make exceptions, but we never make exceptions with respect to the revenue.
Correct.
So we will account for the space, whether we give somebody an accommodation or not, on a case-by-case basis. So we look at these normally. So we filled 1,800 of the 1,884 of the 1,942 spaces.
I think that's opposite the goal. I think you have the
I'm
goal
sorry.
underneath.
Sorry. We
That's okay.
flipped it. These actually should be opposite. So yeah, sorry. Nope, I did it right before. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
So basically the way, let me fix that. Sorry. Okay. We exceeded the goal. I apologize. So our actual utilization was higher than our goal of 1,884 here. Our goal changed after February because we added some classes in the middle of February. That's why the goal changed, and that's why I got confused.
And that's also why the total available changed too, because
correct.
You can see, yeah.
Because we added classes. This was half a month of the new schedule, and this was the full month. So that's why this total available number was a moving target. Sorry about that. And then the actuals are actual, and the goal is a percentage. So the goal was 78%, which we exceeded. And you can see we exceeded it by varying numbers. You can also see we exceeded it in March by a larger number. But when we look at the percentages, let me switch over to that graph. Give me just 1 second to switch over, because I think it'll be more of a better visual representation here. Okay, I'll just pick a random week, and then we can look at them. So if you look at, we literally look at the information by day and by studio. And we look at it like, Christa and I look at it like this once a week. So if our goal is 78%, you can see we only missed that one day in one studio, and not by much. It was 75. But if you look at the averages for the week, we're at 84 and 94, which is, again, not to get too worried about any particular day, right? You want to look at the week as a whole. The other way that's helpful to look at to tell the story is if you take those averages for each week, the first quarter ends right at this dip here, which is spring break, as Christa mentioned. So you can see, but keep in mind, this bottom point number is 70%. So our goal was 78, probably somewhere around here. And we were above 80 for almost the entire quarter, up until the last 2 weeks when spring break started happening. So that's really where you want to focus. And you can see now in April, it's already started to climb back up again. We know we'll see a dip again with some summer travel. So we're just, and then my goal in doing this, or one goal in doing this, was for next year, we could look back and say, you can predict a little bit.
Yep.
And you can use it as a tool for management that way to see how things are going.
And you can superimpose next year on this graph. And so you can see, and what you can see here is that the two different colors are both of our locations. So we have the darker purple is in one location, the lighter purple is in another location. And so there is our South Miami location is actually a smaller footprint. So our utilization is always higher in that location because we can't fit as many people in. And so our utilization in South Miami is usually really great. This graph, I will show you, stay on this graph. This is the spreadsheet that Lauren created for us to track weekly. So when Lauren and I meet once a week, we look at this number. So if we, can you go to the first tab on the sheet?
This one?
So, yep. So this is a scorecard, and all of our businesses in the inner circle have a scorecard that they can track easily. And Lauren sometimes has been, I think, do you guys talk about this in the Grow program or not? Yes, you do. Okay.
Yeah, we started last week. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it's just important to track metrics, because if you don't track them, you don't know how to do better, right? Or you don't know what's working. And so the whole thing of like, oh, well, I'm not a numbers person. Well, if you own a business, you have to be a numbers. You don't have to be a numbers person. You have to look at your numbers. Okay. So we track total sales. We track group class visits in each location separately. We track one-on-one sessions, and we include our physical therapy in there, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So we include physical therapy in our one-on-one sessions, and then unique customers. What unique customers means is, so if you have 100 people coming during a week, is it 3 people that are coming like is it 100 people coming once a week? Is it 50 people coming twice a week? Is it 25 people coming 4 times a week? So unique customers is an individual person. Okay. Did I explain that properly enough? Well enough? Okay.
Yeah.
And then we look at first visits because we want to see first visits, and then we look at utilization. So the way that I look at this is we're grabbing in this spreadsheet all the aspects of our business. So total sales and class visits is really an operational metric, because that's telling us like, how are we doing at providing the day-to-day business, like product for the most part. First visits is a sales and is a marketing metric. So first visits are telling us how well are we at getting our message out to getting new people in the door. Utilization, again, is an product and operational, and also a sales metric, because we want to see that the first people that are coming in are staying, right? And then at the bottom, we have our cash on hand, which Lauren has started, which is basically our finance metric, right? So you have operations, sales and marketing, and then finance. And we're looking at all 3 aspects of our business here. And then, so when we look at this on a weekly basis, we can also see the trends, and then we can see which weeks, like some weeks have 22 first visits. And then I'm assuming that was spring break week that has 9 first visits. Is that or was
I
the
think
week that was Easter week?
I think it was Easter week, and I also think utilization was high.
Yeah.
So you have fewer first visits if you're full with existing customers. If you look, you have 489 visits. So out of a potential like 600, so like there's not as much space for new people if existing people are filling the spots. So
exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a really good, this is why you want to look at the story behind the numbers, right? And so we basically take this, and Lauren and I, when we meet quarterly and annually, we're like, okay, if we want to hit this number in revenue, and how full do we have to, so what utilization do we have to be at to hit that revenue mark and then we look at do we even have the capacity to be at that utilization, right? So if we say we need to be at X amount of visits a week, but then we look at the number of classes we have, or the number of spots we have, or the number of staff we have, we might say we can't even hit that number because we don't even have the ability to do that, right? Which is why it's really important to look at your pricing, to look at your staffing. And then the other thing I would say is if you're exceeding that number, you don't necessarily have to keep your foot on the gas pedal all the time. You could be like, you know what? If we hit this number, we're going to hit our profit goal, and it's okay for us to stay here unless you're in growth mode. But if you're in optimization mode, which we are at Pilates in the Grove for 2024, we're just trying to optimize the studio profit for the most part, right? So this is basically how we do our reviews, and I will say Lauren creates it for me. I don't do it. I cannot create a spreadsheet. She creates the spreadsheets. I love the graphs because I'm a visual person. And so they help me kind of see where we're going. And her and I can talk about the stories that we see in the numbers and what is going well, what should we keep doing? And then what maybe is a little off track if necessary. But if you look at our numbers from Q1, our numbers, I mean, can't be happier than those numbers. That's amazing. So, do you have any advice, tidbits, like any bit of information for either one, a business owner that's listening to this, that's feeling a little overwhelmed right now, and two, someone that's like, I really need to do this in my business. How could I maybe at least, where can I start if I'm not doing that already?
So I think the answer is probably the same for both of those questions. Is I'd pick one thing. I'd just start tracking one thing. Probably bodies through the door is the best thing to track because it's gonna drive all the other numbers. And I would just start with that. And literally, if you can't do Excel and you don't have like a friend or family member or a staff member that is willing to do it for you, obviously we can help with that. But if you're just wanting to start, you could even just keep a tally for yourself, like just to begin until you're ready to take the next step into formalizing a scorecard. You can just start the process, and probably your software platform has a way to do it too. So you can just start by not overwhelming yourself and picking one thing to look at, and then going from there. So my hope would be that you could build up either with our help or on your own to tracking all of these things, because it will give you the most complete information, and then you can make decisions and feel informed. And so then you actually, even though it seems a bit overwhelming, or it could seem a bit overwhelming in the beginning, I think it actually will make you feel less anxious when you feel like you know what's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So
that was great advice.
That would be my advice.
Yeah, that was great advice. Start somewhere. And the other thing is, like Lauren said, you actually are then able to make objective decisions versus and I'm saying this in quotes, feeling decisions. Oh, I feel like we're very full, but feelings are not facts, right? So you could feel that you're full, or you could feel that you have good retention, but maybe you don't. Maybe you think you have great retention, but you actually have really poor retention, but you have really good lead generation. So it always feels full because you always are getting new people in the door, right? So one of the things in the inner circle with Beyond the Movement, we help our businesses create spreadsheets like this. So we create scorecards for them, and based on their individual business. So, for example, if someone is a physical therapy, just one-on-one, we're going to create a different scorecard than group class utilization, right? Our FitBiz foundation. So if you're like, wow, that's really beyond me, and you're just, skirting by $100,000, FitBiz Foundations is a great program because we will help you do that starting point. What is the most important thing we think will move the needle in your business, and what are you going to start tracking? If you're beyond $250,000, $300,000, this is something you should absolutely be tracking. If not, you're just like, you're basically like walking through the forest blindfolded, because you could make very impactful decisions on your business. And so if you're at $250,000, $300,000 or above, and you want to continue to grow and optimize, the inner circle will help you be able to make these kind of decisions, because you have people like Lauren, people like myself, people like Danielle on the finance team that are also kind of helping you create that story in your head of, we're giving you the feedback too of, what story does this tell you? Well, this is what I see. This is what you see, right? And so it's not just looking at the numbers, it's the story behind the numbers. That's really, really important. So thank you so much, Lauren, for creating these beautiful spreadsheets for me and for Pilates in the Grove, and for helping the business owners in the inner circle. So I did say that I had a special gift for you. So I provided a small spreadsheet that we use for like our FitBiz Foundations people to help them just get started. So if you go to christagurka.com/quarterly review, www.christagurka.com/quarterly review, you'll be able to grab and download this worksheet and plug in some of your own numbers. All right. We'll link that up in the show note. And then if you're interested in taking a look at our programs, again, Lauren is an integral part of our coaching and mentorship program. You can visit our website as well. And any last words, Lauren?
Winter had some last words, so I was on mute. No, I think that I guess the best advice would be similar to the last thing I said, which is just start somewhere. Just track one thing and you'll start to feel more empowered. You'll start to feel like you understand what's going on and like you have a roadmap of what you need to do, because even though the numbers can feel overwhelming, they're actually super helpful. And they don't have to be complicated. You do not need a finance MBA to just count how many people come in or how many dollars you deposit in the bank. It's very doable. And hopefully, if you get started, you'll feel that way and it won't be intimidating.
Yeah, I think that's so great advice. And we don't have to put a meaning on the numbers, right? Like we don't have to put a grade. So if you got 10 new visits in, it's not an A or an F. It's just 10 new visits, right? And so you just start seeing some, I think people just are scared because they're like, what does that mean about me? It doesn't mean anything, right? So I invite you to reach out to us, DM me over on Instagram if you'd like, and go ahead and download that worksheet, christagurka.com/quarterly review. And until next time, my friends, this was great. Bye for now.